Welcome back to What Makes You Tick Best Bits. This is an 18-minute special all about hiring salespeople. We talk about the things that you should look for beyond the resume, beyond the experience, beyond the pedigree that actually translate to top performing salespeople, because it's so easy to get this stuff wrong. And the data shows that most people do get it wrong. Look what's happening in the industry in terms of the amount of sales teams that are under target right now. And every week I speak to salespeople who have left environments where they just can't possibly be successful, but they never blame themselves. So who are the people that we should be looking for? What are the traits? How do we spot grit? How do we spot potential? How do we predict performance? And ultimately, if you're an early stage revenue leader or you're working in a scale up with an unstructured environment, don't get tempted by the big resume and the big brand names. Look for the characteristics and attitudes and behaviors that drive ultimate performance and multiply impact within your team. This is a best bit special from my episode with Heath Barnett. I'll put a link to the full show in the comments, but enjoy. Let's roll the BT. I'm curious, right? So we're definitely not the first people as well to talk about the fact that, hire, attitude, train, skill, but we know that doesn't actually exist for most businesses in terms of the way they actually go to market. And if I'm talking to a client about hiring someone, it's normally top of their list when they give me their original brief before I go and do discovery, that, you need to have 5 years experience in our industry. And everyone I've ever met, and I've done a few LinkedIn polls about this, says, yeah, attitude's the most important thing. Attitude is everything, but it doesn't get translated into the way they actually go to market. And whenever there's a situation when they maybe have a couple of good candidates at an advanced stage, they'll always take the safe bet of hiring someone with experience. And people will be listening to this podcast and going, yeah, I've literally been second place in loads of processes because someone with a bit more experience got hired over me. So when you're thinking about the people who are actually controlling how that recruitment process gets built and the decision criteria and how it's executed, why do you think that, even though we know that's true, that the unteachables, the character, that's what makes a great salesperson, why doesn't that get translated into what people actually go and do?
A couple of thoughts I have on that one. So I think the first thought and reaction is going to be executive leadership in your board, right? That does happen to where you get pressure from your CEO, you get pressure from your board to make that like safe hire. I think it also depends where you're at, right? If I'm like early in, like, let's just say I just joined a new organization and I know that there's a lot of stuff that I need to clean up, I'm more likely to take the safer hire out the gate, just because I know there's a lot that I don't know because I still haven't uncovered everything. And so I think part of it too is as a leader is understanding what environment you're stepping into, and also like having that candid conversation with your CEO of like, what is your hiring policy like? Like how involved do you get in the hiring? What do you look for when we actually, like, what does good look like for you for hiring a candidate? So I think that's challenge number one. I think challenge number two is also when we haven't been successful and we continue to try to hire the same profile. You will get met with pushback on that 24/7 because you haven't proved it out, right? And this is why, as a revenue leader, it's so critical for you to make sure you make those right hires, because you make the first couple of bad hires, you're on the line, right? Everything that you start to do, every decision you start to make becomes under question. The third one, I think it comes down to just the interview process, right? Is not being clear of like what good looks like. So one thing that I do when I work with my teams is we have a pre-flight to where it's actually like, hey, this is what we're looking for in each step of the interview process. This is what we actually care about. The one thing that I do that's a little bit different is at the end of every interview is we hold a panel. Maybe many people will not agree with this, but like if it is not everybody in the room is a yes, then I pass on them. I'm a big believer that if somebody's not a hell yes, then that's a hell no.
And that works because you have predefined what success looks like. Because otherwise, you just get people's opinions, and people might not have the full context, right? So how important is that?
Exactly. And so it
Say,
comes down to the
yeah,
the structure of the interview process,
yeah,
making sure everybody knows what they're actually looking for.
yeah,
And I think that is like one of the big problems is we actually go into market to hire. We actually don't
yeah.
know what we're looking for.
100%. Yeah, it's made up along the way. Process steps get added. It's just this hodgepodge. So everything you said is brilliant, by the way, and it made me think back to when I was building teams in a company, and why I was so confident in my hiring is because I knew the business so intimately, and so I knew what the resources were going to look like, and what the environment was going to look like, and who might fit. So we were able to take some really big punts on people who had all the raw ingredients, but none of the experience, because I knew exactly all those other things. I'd never thought about that before. That's brilliant, and I felt quite secure.
And I
Because
probably pulled on some emotional strings there too, because you're like, oh, I remember having that conversation.
yeah, exactly. And the other thing you mentioned that was really powerful, which is having that very candid conversation with your CEO or whoever is like the ultimate decision maker, who has the authority, because you could run a whole process and then find out you don't really have the ability to say yes or no. And unless you have alignment with the person who actually is the authority in the process, you might be responsible and accountable for hiring. But if you don't have authority, then the whole thing can become undone. There's a thing that might piss some people off that I will say next, which is I believe that one of the big mistakes that startups make is that they try to embed corporate type recruitment processes into startups, and they put talent and HR responsible for the process, who are used to, often coming from larger businesses, designing very rigid structures and processes around the way that it works. So it's like if you were designing a go-to-market motion and you're going, right, let's design our sales process. They like take Salesforce's sales process and then try and plug it into a pre-seed startup. And it's like the journey you're going to take customers through is going to be horrendous, absolutely horrendous. And you make it really hard for customers to buy. And I think that there's very little awareness, commercial awareness, and like people leadership awareness, and just lived experience that HR and talent teams have around how do we create a process that sells, and how do we create a process that takes this person that might have multiple opportunities that they could consider to immediately see us as different, better, a chance to learn, a chance to grow, and they'll be fighting to win a place in our business, as opposed to, will they pass our very rigid, structured process that we're going to put in front of them? What do you think about that?
I just in my mind, a couple of like thoughts came through of like experiences that I've had. So I'll give you one example. I remember one time I was working with this one talent lead, and I always identify themes that we want to interview across. And then I'll give you like, here's like 10 different questions that you can ask around that theme. And I remember this person coming to me and they go, I need to know exactly what questions I'm supposed to ask. And I'm like, that's not how this works, right? Like, here's the theme, here's examples, but they're like, but we're not being equal across the interview process if we don't ask the same exact questions. And I was just like, oh wow, like that was my first eye opener where I was like, okay, this person obviously comes from a very corporate background.
Yeah.
So what that taught me though was working with my talent team and being very intentional. And so if anybody that's listening is like, oh, I've had that also, that should be the writing on the wall that like you have not done a good job of aligning with your talent team, aligning what good looks like. So I'll give you an example of what I do with my team today is we align on what we're looking for. I will create an actual persona of this is what the right rep looks like. And then my head of talent will actually send me like, hey, here's 5 different profiles that I found based off what you gave me. Are these aligned? Yes or no? And I'm like, yep, nope. And this is why this one's a no. Cool. All right, I'm going to go source. It allows us to be super focused and intentional when we go sourcing. I think the second one is if you're realizing that you're not asking the right questions in your interview. If you leave an interview or you go and review the scorecards as a sales leader and you can tell that everybody's feedback is like different and from different places, that should be a clear sign that like, okay, maybe I haven't done a good job of like giving the right direction. we want to blame talent, but guess what? It comes down on you as the leader. This is your hire. You are the hiring manager. Your talent team is a resource to help make sure that you find the right talent. It is not their job to define what the right talent looks like.
Yeah.
That's just
Excellent.
lazy. That's just lazy
Yeah.
leadership.
Excellent point. Yeah. And they want to do a great job, right? It's a really
Yeah.
hard job. What I often find is a driver for businesses to use us, particularly if they're like Series B, Series C, which is probably the largest type of companies that we work with, is the talent team often is maybe a team of 3 people and they've got like 50, 60, 70 recs on. So the amount of time that they get to spend on individual roles is incredibly low. They're having to be incredibly reactive. They've got all the hiring manager pressures around where's this hire, we're late, la la la. So it's quite a thankless task. And they didn't really even get like the big commission payment of like placing a successful candidate. So it's just like, right, that job's now off our plate. So I think a part of that is actually creating that alignment is genius. And I love the word, is that aligned is a brilliant question rather than, do you like them? But also creating it to be a fun environment where that person can, like you say, from a framework, actually get to enjoy that conversation and tell you what they found out that was surprising and what they weren't expecting and how that person displayed some like figuring it out and resourcefulness and creativity in the process that they weren't expecting, which if you designed a sort of 20-stage question process and you had to do one by one because you were just trying to fill in your scorecard so you proved that person was a fit so you didn't get in trouble, which is how a lot of businesses treat their talent teams. No wonder what you get is this really poor quality output at the end of it. And like you said, treat people, not as a cost. But if you just try to bring a talent team in too early into your business to save money, then that could be the wrong thing. And there might be this blended approach where you say, for these type of roles, we're going to have talent. We train them really well on how to do these certain things. But these type of roles, we're going to go to specialist partners who maybe already have the experience and already have the relationships, and we can tap into a font of talent that we might not have access to. And I think that often businesses say, we're going to build a talent team and they're going to look after all of our roles. And that context shifting of trying to find an engineer and a finance manager and an SDR and an AE and a sales leader.
I was
Think
about to
about
say
how
that.
hard that would be for someone who's probably like 23, is fresh out of college, is on a 40 grand salary. Like, how do you expect that person to succeed?
Well, and that's why before you said that, that's exactly what I was thinking, because I've also seen this happen to where you have a team lead or a talent lead who specializes in technical, right? I would never ask them to go and source me go-to-market candidates because like they just don't know how to. There's just not the way their brain is wired, right? And that's perfectly fine. But too often in the startup world, we were like, oh, but you wear multiple hats. And it's like, I mean, yeah, they can wear multiple hats, but like that hat is not going to fit them the way you want it to fit them. And so I think it's a great point because it's about making sure that we have the right people wearing the right hats and knowing where we should use a partner on those different areas. And exactly what you said is what I've done before, to where I knew our talent team was great when it came to technical recruiting. They didn't have any experience hiring for go-to-market. So I was like, cool, like let's work with a partner for these first couple of hires. And then once we learn what good looks like, then we can actually like maybe take this in-house.
Yeah, 100%. I think a good external partner should do that. Like my mentality is I'm like a personal trainer, get you match fit.
Exactly.
And if you have like a really talented talent team who are green, and we talk about leaders not getting training. Goodness me, these people aren't getting training in talent. If they get to work with an external partner and we actually get to upskill that person, then that's a really great benefit their business can get. And it's like seeing people not just as a cost, but actually the opposite, as an investment. Invest in those teams who are frontline, because if the talent person is the first person that's ever going to speak to a candidate, a prospective multi-million pound revenue stream for your business, and that interaction's not good and it's formulaic and it's the same and it's painful, then why on earth would that person go, oh, this is the right place for me to go and join, right?
When you hit another point that I was thinking about but we didn't dig into, and you're talking about how do we make sure that when we talk to a candidate that like we're differentiating ourselves as to why they would want to come to this organization. I think the other most critical piece, and this is the first thing I do with any new organization, like startup or scale up that I join, what's your growth path? If you can't actually show an AE that you're trying to recruit what growth looks like from a visual journey mapping perspective, somebody else is going to, because that's what they're looking for, right? Like if I'm interviewing you and you want to be an AE for the rest of your life, I'm okay with that, but you better have a damn good reason why you want to be an AE the rest of your life. But let's be realistic. What we hire for today it is not and should not be their end goal. And so when you actually find the right talent, it is what is their end goal. Does this business actually fit in with their end goal? Because that is not only where you make the right hire, but you also retain the right talent. And a lot of times we don't do that. We don't actually go into this saying, okay, like, well, what is this typical candidate? What are they going to be asking us? What are they going to care about? And do we actually have our stuff together to make sure that we can answer those questions for them? 9 times out of 10, it doesn't happen. And you hurry up. You're like, oh, pull this together. Let's do this, and try to do it. By the time you've done that, you've kind of piecemealed it together and you've lost that candidate. So be intentional.
Yeah, I love it. And a lot of people might be coming in through headhunting, right? So they're not even convinced they want to join. I described this to a founder friend of mine who in just 3 years has built a £60 million business in Miami. Amazing. Or $60 million business. And I was saying to him, the difference between these candidates who are coming through headhunting and the ones who are coming through promotion are the ones that are coming through headhunting is like I'm walking a candle into a room. And there's not going to be very much it takes to go and blow this light out of interest, and our job is to turn this into a roaring fire, and we do that through really understanding them. And I think very few companies that I've seen have any kind of step in their process, which is we want to deeply understand this person and their motivations and where they're trying to go. It's straight away screening, vetting, and qualification. And every great sales process starts with discovery. Particularly when we're talking about people who have the ability to say no, our greatest desire of humans is to feel understood. And if all we're trying to do is understand their track record and their achievements and their history and their fit, I don't think that makes people feel particularly valued.
So what you just hit on exactly, you can take that into the frontline leadership or just leadership in general, right? As a manager or as a leader, you're walking in with that candle. And your job is to turn that candle into this bonfire, right? It's very similar. And the only way you do that by being a good leader is by understanding the people that you lead, plain and simple, right? I think you also hit another one because it's what I love about sales today is the landscape is changing. Most of sales frameworks or the way that sales processes are done, it's a sales-centric checkbox. Are you the right customer for us, right? Are you qualified, yes or no? Yeah. Same thing happens in recruiting is we turn this into a checkbox of are you good enough for us rather than actually understanding what is your motivation? What are the challenges that you're facing today? What growth are you not experiencing today that you want in your next journey, right? That's how you hook people, which is why you make a good point because I've tried to go and recruit. I actually have recruited, especially headhunters, and they've been amazing sellers because I'm they do the hardest sell of all. They sell people. That is so hard. It's not a product. It's not this product is the same as this product and here's the solution. It is every single person's different. Every single job rec they're trying to fill is completely different. Some of the best talent that I've actually gotten was from previous headhunters.
Yeah, totally agree. And again, it's in very, very rarely a career that people want to have for the rest of their time. Most people who are good in recruitment start their own agency really quickly, or they go into the vendor side. It's the classic model. I hired 2 of the best recruiters I ever worked with as sales leaders and salespeople in my teams because they were so good. And it is you talk about value-based selling and selling a sort of, a concept. Every recruiter pretty much could go and do SaaS because it's way more conceptual to try and sell a person than it is a technology. Thank you for listening and watching this Best Bits short. If you like this, tune in next Sunday for our next special part of our favorite episodes. And if you love the main podcast, every Thursday we introduce you to a new virtual mentor so you can hear their career story and answers to the biggest questions in tech. See you on the next episode.